What if everything we think we know about ancient history is missing entire chapters? Across the world, archaeologists keep uncovering places that shouldn't exist. Lost cities older than the pyramids, giant temples built before civilization, villages where the dead lived beneath the floors, ancient treasures buried for thousands of years, and mysterious monuments whose true purpose remains unknown even today. These aren't legends, they're real places, hidden beneath deserts, mountains, forests, and forgotten landscapes across the earth. And the deeper researchers dig, the stranger the story becomes. Tonight, we'll explore some of the most fascinating archaeological discoveries ever found. Places that challenge history, rewrite timelines, and leave experts searching for answers. Before we begin, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is right now. Now settle in, and let's uncover the forgotten world's history almost lost forever. The village that existed before history. Long before the first pyramids rose from the sands of Egypt, before Stonehenge appeared on the hills of England, and before the earliest cities emerged across Mesopotamia, there was a village on the banks of the Euphrates River that may have helped change human history forever. Today, that place is known as Jerf el Ahmar, and despite its importance, most people have never heard of it. At first glance, the site seems unremarkable. No giant temples dominate the landscape. No massive walls stretch across the horizon. No golden treasures were discovered beneath its soil. Yet what archaeologists uncovered here was far more valuable than treasure. They found a glimpse into a moment when humanity was beginning to transform, a moment when people were leaving one way of life behind and stepping into another. The site lies in northern Syria near the Euphrates River. Thousands of years ago, this region looked very different. The river provided water, fertile land, and access to important resources. Wild animals roamed nearby. Plants grew in abundance. For early communities searching for stability, it was an ideal location. And sometime around 11,000 years ago, people began settling here. That date is difficult to comprehend. Jerf el Ahmar existed before writing, before metal tools, before recorded history. The people who lived here left behind no names and no written stories. Yet their village tells an extraordinary story all by itself. For generations, historians believed that early humans gradually moved from hunting and gathering into farming communities. But sites like Jerf el Ahmar reveal that the process was far more complicated than anyone once imagined. Excavations uncovered carefully planned buildings arranged throughout the settlement. These were not random shelters. The structures show organization, planning, cooperation. The community clearly understood how to work together on a large scale. One of the most fascinating discoveries involved large communal buildings unlike ordinary homes. These structures appear to have served special purposes. People gathered inside them. Meetings may have taken place there. Ceremonies may have occurred there. Important decisions may have been made there. Whatever their exact function, they reveal something important. The people of Jerf el Ahmar were already creating shared spaces for the entire community. That level of organisation was once thought to belong to much later societies. Yet here it was, thousands of years earlier. Archaeologists also found evidence suggesting the villagers were experimenting with agriculture. They still hunted wild animals. They still gathered resources from the surrounding landscape. But they were beginning to manage plants in new ways. Humanity was standing at a crossroads. The old world had not completely disappeared. The new one had not fully arrived. Jerf el Ahmar existed somewhere in between, and that may be what makes the site so important. It captures a transition, a rare moment when people were reinventing how they lived. The architecture itself is equally remarkable. Many buildings were circular in shape. Others reveal increasingly complex designs. Storage areas suggest careful planning for the future. Resources were collected, protected, shared. The village was becoming more than a temporary settlement. It was becoming a community. Perhaps even something resembling the earlier stages of civilization. Then there are the carvings. Researchers discovered decorated stones and symbolic designs throughout the site. These objects hint at a rich cultural world that has largely vanished. The people of Jerf el Ahmar were not merely surviving. They were thinking, creating, expressing ideas, developing traditions. Their lives were likely filled with stories, beliefs, and customs that archaeology can only partially recover. One of the most surprising aspects of the site is how advanced it appears for its age. Every excavation seemed to challenge older assumptions. The villagers displayed levels of cooperation and planning that researchers once associated with much later cultures. In some ways, Jerf El Amar feels ahead of its time, a place where the future was beginning long before history officially started. Yet like many ancient settlements, its story eventually came to an end. The village was abandoned. The buildings collapsed, centuries passed, then millennia. Wind and earth slowly covered the remains. The community disappeared from memory. Its people vanished into the distant past. Only archaeology would eventually bring them back. When researchers uncovered the site, they revealed one of the earliest chapters in humanity's journey towards settled life. A chapter that had remained hidden for nearly 11,000 years. Today, Jerf El Amar is recognized as one of the most important prehistoric sites ever discovered in the Near East. Not because of kings, not because of treasure, but because it offers a rare window into a world that existed before civilization as we know it. A village older than history, a community standing at the dawn of a new age, and a place where humanity quietly began changing the world forever. The giant tombs built before the pyramids. In the countryside of western France, surrounded by quiet fields and rolling hills, stand a series of mysterious mounds that look almost natural. From a distance, they resemble small hills rising gently from the landscape. Nothing about them immediately suggests that they are among the oldest monumental structures in Europe, but appearances can be deceiving. Because hidden beneath these grassy mounds are enormous stone tombs built thousands of years before the pyramids of Egypt, a place known today as the Tumulus of Bougon, and one of the oldest burial complexes ever discovered. This site sits in a peaceful part of France, where birdsong and wind are often the only sounds that break the silence. It feels timeless. Yet long before modern roads crossed the region, people were already gathering here, building, planning, and creating monuments designed to survive far beyond their own lifetimes. The oldest tombs at Bougon date back more than 6,000 years. That number is almost impossible to imagine. Entire civilizations separate us from the people who built them. Ancient Greece was still thousands of years away. The Roman Empire did not exist. Even Egypt's earliest pyramids had not yet appeared on the horizon of history. Yet here in western France, communities were already moving massive stones and constructing enormous burial monuments. The builders left behind no written records, no names, no kings carved into stone. Only the tombs remain. And those tombs tell an extraordinary story. Archaeologists discovered that the site contains several large burial mounds built over different periods of time. Each mound hides stone chambers deep within its interior. Some passages lead underground. Others open into carefully constructed burial spaces made from giant slabs of stone. The engineering is remarkable. Many of the stones weigh several tons. Transporting them would have required planning, cooperation, and enormous effort. Yet somehow these prehistoric communities accomplished it. The question is how? Without metal machinery, without wheels capable of carrying such loads, without modern engineering tools, the people of Bougon created structures that have survived for millennia. Researchers believe entire communities may have participated in their construction, hundreds of people working together, dragging stones across the landscape, building monuments not for the living, but for the dead. The tombs appear to have been places of great importance. Human remains were discovered inside several chambers. Generations of burials took place here. The site was not used once and abandoned. It remained significant for centuries, perhaps even longer. Families returned again and again. The dead remained connected to the landscape, and the landscape became sacred. One of the most fascinating aspects of Bougon is what it reveals about prehistoric society. For many years, people imagined ancient farming communities as small and simple, but sites like this challenge that view. Building monuments on this scale required organization, leadership, shared beliefs, and a vision that extended beyond a single lifetime. The people who built Bougon were thinking about the future. They were creating something permanent, something that would outlast them all. Walking among the mounds today feels strangely peaceful. Grass covers much of the stone beneath. The structures blend into the countryside. Yet beneath every mound lies evidence of one of humanity's oldest traditions. The desire to remember, to honour ancestors, to create places where memory survives. Over thousands of years, storms passed overhead. Kingdoms rose and fell. Languages changed. Entire civilizations disappeared. Yet the tombs remained. waiting quietly beneath the earth. Then came archaeology. Excavations revealed chambers hidden inside the mounds. Stone passageways emerged from the soil. Researchers slowly pieced together the story of the people who built them. Every discovery revealed another fragment of a forgotten world. Yet many mysteries remain. Who exactly was buried here? Why was this place chosen? What ceremonies took place around these giant tombs? And what beliefs inspired communities to spend generations constructing them? The answers may never be fully known. The builders carried their secrets into the grave thousands of years ago. But the monuments remain. Silent, ancient, and impossibly old. A burial complex older than the pyramids. A sacred landscape built by forgotten hands. And one of the earliest monuments ever created by human civilization. The giant burial mound filled with ancient treasure. On the coast of western France stands a hill that isn't really a hill. For thousands of years, people have looked at it and seen nothing unusual. Just a large grassy mound rising above the surrounding landscape. But beneath that mound lies one of the most extraordinary prehistoric monuments in Europe, a place known as the Saint-Michel tumulus. And a structure so ancient that it was already standing long before the pyramids of Egypt were built. The monument overlooks the famous region of Karnak, a landscape filled with ancient mysteries. Thousands of standing stones stretch across nearby fields. Strange alignments cover the countryside, and at the centre of it all rises the Saint-Michel tumulus. The mound dominates the horizon. Measuring more than 100 metres in length, it is one of the largest burial monuments of its kind in Europe. Its sheer size immediately raises a question. Why would prehistoric people invest so much effort into building something this enormous? The answer remains partly hidden beneath thousands of years of history. Archaeologists believe the monument was built around 4500 BC. That means it dates back more than 6,000 years. At the time, farming communities were spreading across Europe. Metal tools were still unknown. Writing had not yet been invented. Yet somehow people gathered here and created a monument on a scale that still impresses modern researchers. The construction required an extraordinary amount of labour. Stone, earth, planning, organisation. Everything had to be coordinated without modern technology. Generation after generation likely contributed to the project. The result was a massive artificial mound visible across the surrounding landscape, a monument impossible to ignore. For centuries, local people wondered what lay inside. Legends developed, stories spread. Some believed hidden treasure rested beneath the mound. Others imagined forgotten kings buried within. Then archaeologists finally began investigating, and they discovered something remarkable. Deep inside the tumulus were burial chambers containing valuable objects from a distant past. Stone axes crafted from rare materials, jewellery, decorative artefacts, items that would have required significant effort to obtain. These discoveries revealed that the people buried here held special status within their society. The tomb was not built for ordinary individuals. It was a monument dedicated to people of great importance. Perhaps leaders, perhaps spiritual figures, perhaps members of powerful families whose influence extended across the region. No one knows for certain. The names of those buried here disappeared thousands of years ago. Yet the scale of the monument suggests that their memory mattered deeply to the people who built it. One of the most fascinating aspects of the Saint-Michel tumulus is what it reveals about prehistoric Europe. For many years, ancient communities were imagined as simple groups focused entirely on survival. Sites like this tell a different story. The builders possessed ambition, organisation, engineering knowledge, and beliefs powerful enough to inspire monumental construction. They were creating architecture designed to last forever, and in many ways they succeeded. The mound survived while entire civilizations vanished. Empires rose and collapsed. Languages appeared and disappeared. History moved forward, yet the tumulus remained, standing quietly above the coast, watching centuries pass. Its location may not have been chosen by accident. From the summit, the surrounding landscape unfolds in every direction. Fields, hills, the distant sea. The view is extraordinary. Perhaps the builders considered the location sacred. Perhaps it connected the world of the living with the world of the dead. Or perhaps its meaning has been lost forever. Like so many prehistoric monuments, the answers remain uncertain. That uncertainty only adds to the mystery. because unlike later civilizations, the builders left behind no written explanation. The stones cannot speak. The tombs reveal only fragments. Archaeologists continue piecing together clues, but much of the story remains hidden. Today, visitors climbing the mound often find themselves standing in silence, looking across the landscape, imagining the people who built this place 6,000 years ago, people whose names are forgotten, whose language vanished, yet whose monument still survives. A giant burial mound older than the pyramids, a sacred place filled with ancient treasure, and one of the most remarkable prehistoric mysteries in all of France. The first mountain built by human hands. In the deserts of southern Iraq, where some of the world's earliest cities once stood, lie the remains of a structure that changed history. Today, only broken foundations survive, scattered mud brick, weathered ruins, fragments slowly returning to the earth. To most visitors, it may not look extraordinary. But thousands of years ago, this place dominated the horizon. It rose above one of humanity's first great cities, a monument dedicated to the heavens, a structure so influential that its design would inspire generations of builders across Mesopotamia. This was the Anu Ziggurat of Uruk, and it may have been one of the first attempts by human beings to build a mountain, not a natural mountain, a man-made one. The story begins in the ancient city of Uruk. More than 5,000 years ago, Uruk was unlike anything the world had seen before. Its population grew rapidly, trade routes expanded, craftsmen produced goods on a large scale, temples rose above crowded streets. Many historians consider Uruk one of the first true cities in human history, a place where civilization itself was taking shape. At the heart of the city stood a sacred district dedicated to powerful gods. Among them was Anu, the god of the sky, one of the most important deities in Mesopotamian belief. To honor him, the people of Uruk created something extraordinary. They built an enormous elevated platform rising above the surrounding city. Layer after layer of mud brick was added. Workers carried materials by hand. Construction continued year after year. Slowly, a massive artificial hill emerged from the flat landscape. Upon that platform stood a temple, a sacred place closer to the heavens than anything around it. For the people below, the sight must have been astonishing. The structure towered above homes and streets, visible from great distances, a symbol of religious devotion, but also a symbol of power. The higher the temple stood, the closer it seemed to the realm of the gods. At least that was the belief. In a land where natural mountains were distant, people created one themselves. One of the most remarkable things about the Anu Ziggurat is its age. The earliest phases date back to a period when cities were still a new idea. Writing was only beginning to appear. Governments were still evolving. Yet the people of Uruk already possessed the ability to organize massive construction projects. Thousands of workers may have participated. Materials had to be gathered, bricks produced, labor coordinated. Everything required planning on an enormous scale. The monument reveals just how advanced early Mesopotamian society had become. Archaeologists believe the platform was expanded several times over centuries. Each generation built upon the work of those who came before. The sacred district grew larger, the structures became more impressive, and the connection between religion and urban life became stronger. For the people of Uruk, this was not merely a building, it was the centre of their world. Ceremonies likely took place atop the platform. Priests performed rituals, offerings were presented, important religious events unfolded beneath the open sky. Yet despite its importance, much remains unknown. The builders left behind clues, but not complete answers. No detailed description survives explaining exactly how every ceremony worked. No witness remains to tell the full story, only fragments remain, and those fragments continue fascinating archaeologists today. The Anu Ziggurat also represents the beginning of something much larger. Later Mesopotamian civilizations would build even greater ziggurats. Towering stepped structures appeared across the region. Some became symbols of entire cities, others inspired legends that survived for thousands of years. But many historians believe the origins of that tradition can be traced back to Uruk. The idea started here, a sacred building raised above the ordinary world, a bridge between earth and sky, a mountain created by human hands. As centuries passed, empires rose and fell across Mesopotamia. New rulers arrived, new temples replaced old ones, The great structures slowly aged. Mud brick crumbled, walls collapsed, the city itself declined. Eventually, the once mighty Uruk became a ruin. The sacred platform that had dominated the skyline gradually disappeared beneath layers of dust and time, yet its influence never vanished, because the idea survived long after the structure itself began to fade. Today, archaeologists studying the ruins of Uruk are looking at more than broken foundations. They are looking at one of the earliest expressions of urban civilization, a place where humanity experimented with new ways of organizing society, a place where religion, architecture and power came together on a scale never seen before. And beneath the Iraqi sun, the remains of the Anu Ziggurat still mark the spot where one of the world's first cities reached toward the sky. The first mountain built by human hands, and one of the most important monuments of the ancient world. The stone tomb that defied 5,000 years. On a remote island north of mainland Scotland stands a stone tomb so old that it was already ancient before the pyramids of Egypt were built. For thousands of years, fierce Atlantic storms have battered its walls, powerful winds have swept across the coastline, entire civilizations have risen and fallen. Yet somehow, this monument remains standing. Its name is Midhow Chambered Cairn, and it is one of the most remarkable prehistoric structures ever discovered in the Orkney Islands. At first glance, the monument appears simple. A long mound of stone stretches across the landscape overlooking the sea. The structure blends naturally into its surroundings. Visitors might easily mistake it for part of the rocky coastline itself. But hidden within that mound lies a carefully designed chamber, built by people who lived more than 5,000 years ago. People whose names have long been forgotten, yet whose engineering still survives. The Orkney Islands are famous for their prehistoric monuments. Across the island stand ancient villages, stone circles and burial chambers that reveal an astonishing chapter of human history. For reasons archaeologists still debate, these windswept islands became one of the most important centres of prehistoric life in northern Europe, and Midhow is among their greatest mysteries. The tomb was built around 3500 BC. At that time, farming communities had begun settling across the islands. They raised animals, cultivated crops, built permanent homes, and gradually transformed the landscape around them. But they also invested enormous effort into monuments connected to death and memory. Midhow was one of those monuments. The structure measures more than 20 metres in length. Inside, a long stone passage leads through the centre of the tomb. Large upright slabs divide the interior into separate compartments. Each section may have held burials belonging to different families or groups. The design is remarkably sophisticated. Everything appears carefully planned, every stone positioned with purpose. Even today, visitors entering the chamber often feel a sense of awe, because despite its age, the structure remains surprisingly intact. Archaeologists believe the tomb served as a communal burial place. Human remains discovered within suggest that generations of people were laid to rest here over extended periods of time. This was not a tomb for a single ruler, nor was it built for a single event. It was a monument used repeatedly by an entire community, a place where the living returned to remember their ancestors, and perhaps seek guidance from them. One of the most fascinating aspects of Midhow is its location. The cairn overlooks the sea. From nearby cliffs, the North Atlantic stretches endlessly toward the horizon. The view is dramatic, powerful, almost spiritual. For prehistoric people, locations like this may have carried special meaning. The boundary between land and sea often held symbolic importance. Perhaps the builders believed the dead were beginning another journey. Perhaps the ocean represented a gateway to another world. No one can say for certain. The builders left behind no written records, only stone and silence. Excavations revealed that the tomb contained far more than human remains. Researchers discovered evidence of ritual activity and carefully arranged burials. The people who used Midhow clearly followed traditions that were deeply important to them. Death was not treated casually. It was woven into the life of the community. The tomb became a place where memory endured, a place where generations remained connected long after death. Yet many mysteries remain. Who exactly were the people buried here? What ceremonies took place inside the chamber? Why was this location chosen? And what beliefs inspired such an enormous construction project? The answers disappeared thousands of years ago. Like so many prehistoric sites, Midhow survives as a puzzle whose pieces are incomplete. Still, the monument continues revealing clues. Every stone tells part of the story, every chamber hints at lives once lived, and every discovery brings archaeologists a little closer to understanding a world that existed long before recorded history. Today, visitors can walk through the chamber and stand where ancient islanders once gathered. The experience feels strangely personal. The stones are real, the space is tangible, and for a moment the distance between past and present seems to disappear. A tomb built before the pyramids, a monument overlooking the northern seas, and a place that has survived for more than 5,000 years, the Midhow Chambered Cairn remains one of Scotland's greatest prehistoric mysteries. A silent stone memory preserved against the winds of time. The mysterious pyramids hidden in the forests of Poland. When most people hear the word pyramid, they immediately think of Egypt. They imagine giant stone monuments rising above the desert, ancient pharaohs, lost treasures, and mysteries buried beneath the sand. But deep within the forests of northern Poland stand a group of monuments that many people have never heard of. Structures so unusual that they are often called the Polish pyramids, and despite their name, they were built thousands of years before Poland even existed. Hidden among quiet woodlands in the Kujawia region, these enormous burial mounds remain one of Europe's most fascinating prehistoric mysteries. At first glance, the monuments do not look like traditional pyramids. They are long triangular earth mounds stretching across the landscape. Some measure more than 100 metres in length. Others rise several metres above the surrounding ground. When viewed from above, their shape becomes clear. Wide at one end, narrow at the other, almost like giant stone arrows pointing toward the horizon. The scale is astonishing, especially when considering their age. Archaeologists believe the mounds were built around 3,500 BC. That means they are older than many Egyptian pyramids, older than Stonehenge, and older than countless civilizations that would later dominate history. The people responsible belong to a culture known as the funnel beaker culture. They were among Europe's earliest farming communities, yet despite their relatively simple technology, they managed to create monuments of extraordinary size. Building a single mound required enormous effort. Large stones had to be transported across the landscape. Earth had to be moved. Structures carefully planned. Everything was accomplished without metal machinery or advanced engineering tools. The construction would have demanded cooperation from entire communities, perhaps hundreds of people working together toward a shared goal. The question is why? Why invest so much labour into these enormous monuments? Researchers believe the mounds served as tombs. Burial chambers were often placed within the wider end of the structure. Human remains and artefacts discovered inside suggest that important individuals were laid to rest there. But the sheer scale of the monuments hints at something more. These were not ordinary graves. They were statements, symbols of memory, monuments designed to be seen and remembered. One of the most fascinating discoveries is that only a small number of people appear to have been buried within these giant structures. Entire communities may have helped construct them, yet only a select few were placed inside. Who were these individuals? Powerful leaders? Respected elders? Spiritual figures? The truth remains uncertain. The builders left behind no written explanations, only the monuments themselves. For centuries the mounds remained hidden beneath forests and vegetation. Many people passed by without realizing what lay beneath the trees. Some structures slowly disappeared into the landscape. Others survived surprisingly well. Then archaeologists began uncovering them. As excavations continued, researchers realized they had discovered something extraordinary. A prehistoric landscape unlike anything else in Europe. The mounds revealed a society capable of long-term planning and large-scale construction. A society far more organized than many people once imagined. The monuments also challenge assumptions about prehistoric Europe. For years, ancient farming communities were often viewed as small and isolated. The Polish pyramids tell a different story. They reveal ambition, cooperation, engineering skill, and a desire to create something that would survive for generations. Even today, walking among the mounds feels strange. The forest is quiet. Birds move through the trees, and beneath the earth lie monuments older than recorded history. Monuments built by people whose names have vanished forever, yet whose creations still endure. Many questions remain unanswered. What ceremonies took place here? What beliefs inspired these enormous constructions, and why were certain individuals chosen to receive such monumental burials? The answers disappeared thousands of years ago. But the mystery survives. Hidden among the forests of Poland stand giant earth monuments older than the pyramids, silent reminders of a forgotten world, a world where prehistoric communities reshaped the landscape to honour their dead, and left behind one of Europe's most remarkable archaeological mysteries, the giant horse carved into a mountain. High above the English countryside, stretched across a hillside in southern England, lies one of the strangest ancient monuments in Europe. It isn't a castle, it isn't a temple, and it isn't a tomb. Instead, it is a giant horse, a massive white figure carved directly into the side of a hill, so large that it can only truly be appreciated from the sky. For thousands of years it has overlooked the surrounding landscape, watching civilizations rise and fall, watching generations come and go. And despite centuries of study, nobody knows exactly why it was created. This is the mystery of the Uffington White Horse. The monument lies in Oxfordshire, overlooking a landscape of rolling hills and ancient pathways. From nearby, the figure can be surprisingly difficult to recognise. The lines are simply too large. Only when viewed from a distance, or from above, does its full shape become visible. Then suddenly the image appears, a horse in motion, its body stretched forward, its legs extended as though it is running across the hillside. The design is elegant, simple, almost modern-looking, which makes its age even more surprising. For generations, people debated when the horse was created. Some believed it dated back only a few hundred years. Others connected it to medieval legends. But modern scientific testing revealed something extraordinary. The monument is around 3,000 years old, possibly older. That means it was created during the late Bronze Age or early Iron Age, long before the Roman Empire, long before England existed as a nation, long before most of the history we know today. The horse was already racing across the hillside. The discovery transformed the monument from a local curiosity into one of Britain's greatest archaeological mysteries. Because creating the figure would have required careful planning. The horse was formed by cutting deep trenches into the hillside and filling them with bright white chalk. The proportions had to work across an enormous scale. Every curve had to be visible from far away. The builders clearly knew exactly what they were doing, yet they left no written explanation behind. No inscription, no record, no clue revealing its purpose. Only the horse remains. One theory suggests the figure was a tribal symbol, a giant emblem visible across the surrounding landscape. Another proposes that it held religious significance. In many ancient cultures, horses represented power, status, and spiritual importance. Perhaps ceremonies once took place here. Perhaps the monument honoured a forgotten deity. Or perhaps its true purpose has been lost forever. The mystery deepens when researchers examine the surrounding landscape. The White Horse does not stand alone. Nearby are ancient earthworks, burial mounds, and prehistoric pathways that have existed for thousands of years. One of the most famous is Uffington Castle, an Iron Age hill fort overlooking the countryside. There is also Dragon Hill, a strange mound connected to local legends of dragons and heroes. Together, the monuments create a landscape filled with history and mystery, a place where stories have accumulated for thousands of years. One of the most remarkable things about the White Horse is its survival. Unlike stone monuments, the figure requires constant maintenance. Without care, grass would quickly cover the chalk. The horse would disappear. Yet generation after generation preserved it. People returned regularly to clean and restore the figure. For thousands of years, communities protected the monument. That fact alone suggests it held great importance. The horse was never forgotten, even when its original purpose was. Today, visitors travel from around the world to see it. Many expect a simple archaeological site. Instead, they encounter something far stranger. A giant image embedded into the landscape itself. A monument that only fully reveals itself from the sky. And a mystery that has survived for 3 millennia. Even now, archaeologists continue studying the site. New technologies provide new clues. Fresh theories emerge, but no explanation has completely solved the puzzle. Why a horse? Why this hillside? And what message were its creators trying to leave behind? The answers remain hidden somewhere in the distant past, yet the White Horse continues running across the hillside. Silent, ancient, timeless, a giant symbol carved into a mountain, and one of the oldest mysteries in all of England, the mysterious stone structures built on remote islands. Far out in the Atlantic Ocean, off the northwest coast of Africa, lies a chain of volcanic islands filled with ancient mysteries. Today, they are known as the Canary Islands. Millions of visitors come here every year for sunshine, beaches, and dramatic landscapes. But hidden among the mountains and valleys are traces of a forgotten world, a world that existed long before European explorers arrived, a world whose people left behind strange stone structures that continue to puzzle archaeologists today. The story begins with the island's earliest known inhabitants. Known collectively as the Guanches, these people lived in the Canary Islands for centuries before outside contact transformed their world. Where they originally came from remains a subject of debate, although most evidence points toward North African origins. Yet once they settled on the islands, they developed a culture unlike any other. Separated from the mainland by hundreds of kilometres of ocean, they created their own traditions, beliefs, and ways of life. And they left behind remarkable stone monuments. Across several islands, archaeologists have discovered mysterious structures built from volcanic rock. Some appear to have served ceremonial purposes, others may have been connected to astronomy. Still others remain difficult to explain. One of the most famous examples can be found on Tenerife, where carefully arranged stone formations rise from the landscape. At first glance, they resemble simple piles of stone, but closer inspection reveals something more deliberate. The stones were placed with intention. The structures follow specific patterns, and some appear aligned with important solar events. That discovery immediately raised questions. Were these monuments connected to ancient observations of the sky? Did the islanders track the movement of the sun? Did they build ceremonial spaces linked to seasonal cycles? The answers remain uncertain. What is clear is that the builders possessed a deeper understanding of their environment than many people once believed. The mystery becomes even more fascinating when considering the islands themselves. The Canary Islands are volcanic. Towering peaks dominate the horizon. Ancient lava fields cover large areas of land. The environment can feel otherworldly. For prehistoric communities, such dramatic landscapes may have held spiritual significance. Mountains often became sacred places in ancient cultures. Volcanoes inspired stories and beliefs. The natural world was woven into everyday life. Many researchers believe some of the stone structures may reflect that relationship. The builders were not simply creating practical buildings. They may have been creating places of meaning, places where people gathered, observed the heavens, or participated in ceremonies now lost to time. Excavations across the islands have revealed additional clues: caves containing burials, rock carvings etched into volcanic stone, ancient settlements hidden in remote valleys. Each discovery adds another piece to the puzzle, yet no complete picture has emerged. The Guanches left no written records explaining their beliefs. Much of their story disappeared after European conquest changed the islands forever. As a result, archaeologists must reconstruct the past using fragments: a wall, a carving, a foundation, a collection of stones arranged in a way that seems too precise to be accidental. One of the most surprising aspects of Canary Islands archaeology is how much remains unknown. Despite decades of research, new discoveries continue appearing. Entire sites remain unexplored, questions remain unanswered, and debates continue regarding the purpose of many structures. Some researchers see evidence of astronomy, others see ritual architecture. Others argue for practical explanations. The discussion remains open, and that uncertainty only adds to the fascination. Because these monuments exist in one of the most isolated regions of the ancient world, separated from major civilizations, separated from famous empires. Yet somehow the islanders created a cultural landscape that continues to attract attention centuries later. Standing among the stone structures today, it is easy to understand why. The volcanic mountains rise in the distance, the Atlantic stretches toward the horizon, and the stones remain exactly where ancient hands placed them. Silent witnesses to a forgotten culture, a culture that adapted to life on remote islands and left behind mysteries that still challenge modern archaeology. The Canary Islands are often known for their natural beauty, but beneath that beauty lies something far older: ancient stone monuments, lost traditions, and unanswered questions buried among volcanic landscapes. A forgotten world in the middle of the Atlantic, and one of Europe's most intriguing archaeological mysteries, the giant eye in the desert. Deep within the Sahara Desert, visible from space and stretching nearly 40 kilometres across the landscape, lies one of the strangest formations on Earth. From above, it looks almost impossible. A series of enormous concentric circles spread across the desert floor. Ring after ring after ring, perfectly visible against the surrounding sands. So unusual that astronauts orbiting Earth immediately noticed it. Today, it is known as the Richat structure, but many people call it something else, the Eye of the Sahara. And for decades, it has inspired some of the most extraordinary theories in archaeology. At first glance, the formation looks artificial. The circular rings appear too precise, too symmetrical, too massive. From the ground, the structure is difficult to recognize because of its immense size. But from the air, the pattern becomes unmistakable, a giant eye staring up from the heart of Mauritania. The sight is so remarkable that some people refuse to believe it is natural. Over the years, countless theories have emerged. Some suggested it was the remains of an ancient impact crater. Others proposed that it was evidence of a lost civilization. A few even connected it to the legendary city of Atlantis. The comparisons were hard to ignore. Ancient descriptions of Atlantis often mentioned circular rings of land and water. The Richat structure appeared to share a similar shape. For believers, the resemblance seemed too striking to be coincidence. The theory spread rapidly across books, documentaries, and the internet. Yet archaeology tells a different story. Researchers studying the formation discovered that the Richat structure was created through geological processes over millions of years. Layers of rock were gradually uplifted. Wind and erosion slowly shaped the landscape. Over immense periods of time, nature created the circular appearance visible today. The explanation is scientific, but strangely enough, it does not make the site any less fascinating. Because even if the formation itself is natural, the surrounding region contains evidence of ancient human activity. Stone tools have been discovered throughout the area. Prehistoric communities once lived nearby during periods when the Sahara looked very different. Thousands of years ago, this region was not the endless desert we see today. It contained lakes, grasslands, wildlife, human settlements. The Sahara was greener, wetter, and capable of supporting life on a much larger scale. People hunted here, travelled here, and left traces behind. That connection between ancient humanity and the Richat structure only deepens the mystery. Imagine standing within the giant rings thousands of years ago. The landscape would have looked completely different. Water sources may have existed nearby. Animals moved across the plains. Communities occupied regions that are now barren desert. The Eye of the Sahara would have been part of their world. One of the most remarkable aspects of the Richat structure is its scale. The rings stretch across such a vast area that they are difficult to comprehend from the ground. Only modern aviation revealed the full pattern. For most of human history, nobody could see the formation as a whole. Ancient travellers would have experienced only small portions of it. The giant eye remained hidden in plain sight, waiting for humanity to gain a new perspective. When astronauts first observed it from space, the structure became an important landmark. Its unique appearance made it easy to identify from orbit. Even today, astronauts often use it as a visual reference point while crossing the Sahara. Few geological formations are so distinctive, few look so mysterious, and few have inspired so much speculation. Researchers continue studying the region, searching for clues about both its geological history and its prehistoric inhabitants. Every discovery helps reveal another chapter of the story, yet the Richat structure still feels almost unreal. The enormous circles, the endless desert, the feeling that something so perfectly shaped should not exist. Perhaps that is why the site continues capturing imaginations around the world. Not because it proves Atlantis existed, not because it was built by a lost civilization, but because it reminds us how strange our planet can be. Deep in the Sahara lies a giant eye visible from space, a formation created by nature yet surrounded by mystery. A place where geology, archaeology and imagination meet, and one of the most fascinating landscapes on Earth. Vastium. The lost Arctic kingdom that never existed. Far beyond the northern seas, beyond the edges of the known world, ancient maps once showed a mysterious land, a place called Hyperborea. According to legends, it was a paradise hidden near the Arctic. a kingdom blessed with endless sunlight, a land of wisdom, prosperity, and extraordinary people. For centuries, explorers searched for it, historians debated it, and dreamers imagined what might lie beyond the horizon. Yet there was one problem. Nobody could ever find it. Still, the mystery refused to disappear, because Hyperborea remains one of history's most fascinating lost world legends. The story begins in ancient Greece. More than 2,000 years ago, Greek writers described a distant land far to the north, a place beyond the reach of ordinary travellers. The name itself meant beyond the north wind. According to the stories, the people who lived there enjoyed peaceful lives untouched by war or suffering. Some accounts described a land where the sun remained visible for unusually long periods. Others spoke of sacred connections to the gods. To the ancient Greeks, Hyperborea occupied the edge of imagination, a place where myth and geography blended together. As centuries passed, the legend spread. Writers repeated the stories. Cartographers added mysterious northern lands to their maps. And gradually, Hyperborea became something more than a myth. It became a possibility. During the Age of Exploration, interest in the Arctic increased dramatically. European sailors pushed farther north than ever before. New coastlines appeared on maps. Previously unknown regions entered the historical record. Yet despite countless voyages, Hyperborea remained elusive. No hidden kingdom emerged from the ice. No ancient civilization appeared beyond the Arctic Circle. Still, some people remained convinced that the legends contained a grain of truth. One reason was the strange appearance of certain historical maps. Several old maps depict large land masses in the far north. Some show islands, others display circular arrangements of land surrounding a central region. To modern eyes, these maps can appear mysterious. Did ancient cartographers possess knowledge that has since been lost? Or were they simply filling unknown spaces with speculation? Most historians support the second explanation. Early map makers often relied on incomplete information. When details were unavailable, imagination frequently filled the gaps. The Arctic remained one of the least understood regions on Earth. As a result, myths and geography often became intertwined. Yet the fascination never disappeared. Over time, Hyperborea attracted increasingly unusual theories. Some claimed it was the birthplace of a forgotten advanced civilization. Others suggested it was connected to lost knowledge from humanity's distant past. A few proposed that it disappeared beneath the sea or was destroyed by catastrophic climate change. These ideas became popular in books and speculative histories. But archaeologists have found no evidence supporting the existence of such a civilization. That has not stopped the mystery from growing, because the Arctic itself is genuinely fascinating. Thousands of years ago, northern regions experienced environmental conditions very different from those of today. Human communities adapted to extreme climates, migrated across vast distances, and survived in landscapes many people would consider uninhabitable. Ancient Arctic history is filled with remarkable achievements, yet none have revealed a lost Hyperborean kingdom. What researchers have discovered instead is something equally interesting: the power of stories. For centuries, people looked toward unknown regions and imagined what might exist there. Every unexplored frontier inspired legends. Every blank space on a map invited speculation. Hyperborea became one of the greatest examples, a place born from mystery itself. Even today, the legend continues attracting attention. Ancient maps circulate online. Theories appear in documentaries and books. New generations encounter the story and ask the same question: what if Hyperborea was real? It is a fascinating possibility. But for now, the evidence points elsewhere. The kingdom likely belongs to mythology rather than history, a creation of ancient imagination rather than archaeology. Yet perhaps that is what makes Hyperborea so enduring. Unlike many mysteries, it was never truly about discovering a lost city. It was about humanity's desire to explore the unknown, to wonder what exists beyond the horizon, and to dream about places no one has ever seen. Whether real or imagined, Hyperborea remains one of the world's greatest legends, a lost Arctic kingdom hidden on ancient maps, a mystery that survived for thousands of years, and a reminder that sometimes the most powerful places in history exist not in the ground beneath our feet, but in the stories we continue to tell. The temple village that existed before civilization. Long before the pyramids of Egypt, before Stonehenge was built, and before the world's first cities appeared across Mesopotamia, there was a settlement in what is now southeastern Turkey that should not have existed. A place filled with stone architecture, carved pillars, and ceremonial buildings thousands of years earlier than archaeologists once thought possible. Its name was Navali Chori, and its discovery helped rewrite the story of human civilization. For centuries the site remained hidden beneath the landscape near the Euphrates River. No one knew it existed. No ancient records mentioned it. No legends preserved its memory. Then archaeologists uncovered something extraordinary. The deeper they excavated, the more astonishing the site became. What they found was not simply a village. It was a community that seemed far ahead of its time. Navali Chori dates back more than 10,000 years. That number is difficult to comprehend. At the time, much of humanity still lived as hunter-gatherers. Writing did not exist. Metal tools did not exist. Large cities had not yet appeared. Yet here stood carefully planned stone buildings unlike anything researchers expected to find from such an early period. The settlement occupied a strategic location overlooking the surrounding landscape. Nearby rivers provided water. Wild plants and animals supplied food. Life was possible here in ways that attracted human communities for generations. But survival alone does not explain what archaeologists discovered. The most remarkable structures at Navali Chori were its ceremonial buildings. Inside these structures stood massive limestone pillars. Some featured carved human forms. Others displayed unusual symbols and designs. The craftsmanship was astonishing. The builders clearly possessed advanced skills, and they were investing enormous effort into construction projects that served purposes beyond everyday life. One building in particular captured worldwide attention. Within its walls stood rows of carefully positioned stone pillars. The arrangement appeared intentional, almost sacred. Researchers immediately noticed similarities with another famous site in the region, Göbekli Tepe. Both locations seemed connected to a much older chapter of human history than anyone had imagined. A chapter where monumental architecture existed before civilization itself. That discovery challenged long-standing assumptions. For decades, historians believed that organized societies emerged first. Then came temples and monuments. But sites like Navali Chori suggested something different. Perhaps shared beliefs came first. Perhaps ceremonial centers brought people together. Perhaps religion and cooperation helped create the foundations of civilization. It was a revolutionary idea, and one that continues shaping archaeological research today. The mystery deepens when examining the art left behind by the builders. Stone sculptures discovered at the site depict human faces and figures unlike anything previously known from the period. Some appear surprisingly realistic, others seem symbolic. Their meaning remains uncertain, but they reveal something important. The people of Navali Chori were not simply focused on survival, they were expressing ideas, creating symbols, and participating in traditions whose full meaning has been lost. Excavations also uncovered evidence of one of humanity's greatest transformations, the transition toward farming. The people here lived during a period when communities were beginning to cultivate plants and domesticate animals. Humanity was changing. Old ways of life were disappearing, new ones were emerging. Navali Chori stood directly at that turning point, a witness to one of the most important transitions in human history. Sadly, the site itself no longer survives in its original form. During the 20th century, construction of a large dam project threatened the area. Archaeologists raced to document and excavate as much as possible before rising waters arrived. Eventually, the site disappeared beneath a reservoir. Its buildings vanished from view, its foundations sank beneath the water, but its discoveries had already changed archaeology forever. Today, Navali Chori remains one of the most important prehistoric sites ever uncovered. Not because of treasure, not because of kings, but because it revealed a forgotten world. A world where people were building temples before cities, creating monuments before civilization, and laying the foundations for everything that would come later. A lost village beneath the waters of Turkey, a place older than history itself, and one of the most remarkable archaeological mysteries ever discovered. The lost stone city beside Skara Brae. For more than a century, archaeologists believed they understood the story of prehistoric Orkney. There was Skara Brae, the famous stone village hidden beneath the sands of Scotland. A remarkable settlement older than the pyramids, a place where ancient families lived, worked, and built their homes from stone. It was already considered one of the most important archaeological discoveries in Europe. Then researchers found something unexpected, something much larger, something far more mysterious. Just a few kilometres away, hidden beneath grassy fields between two ancient lakes, lay the remains of a forgotten ceremonial complex unlike anything ever discovered in Britain. Today it is known as the Ness of Brodgar, and it is rewriting the history of prehistoric Europe. The site sits on a narrow strip of land between the Loch of Harray and the Loch of Stennis in the Orkney Islands. Even the location feels special. Ancient monuments surround the area. Nearby stand the famous stones of Stennis. Not far away rises the Ring of Brodgar. Ancient burial mounds dot the landscape. Every direction seems connected to the distant past. For thousands of years, people clearly regarded this place as important. The question is why? The mystery began when archaeologists noticed unusual traces beneath the ground. Excavations followed. Then came the discoveries. Walls emerged from the soil. Massive stone buildings appeared. Decorated slabs were uncovered. The deeper researchers dug, the more astonishing the site became. What they found was not a simple settlement. It was an enormous ceremonial centre dating back roughly 5,000 years, one of the largest ever discovered from the Neolithic period. Some of the buildings were enormous, far larger than ordinary homes. Thick stone walls enclosed carefully designed spaces. Certain structures measured lengths rarely seen in prehistoric Britain. The scale immediately suggested that this was no ordinary village. People gathered here for a reason. A very important reason. One building became especially famous. Archaeologists nicknamed it the Neolithic Cathedral. Its size was extraordinary. Stone walls stretched across the site. Decorated stones lined portions of the structure. The building appears to have dominated the landscape during its time. Anyone approaching would have seen it from a great distance, yet nobody knows exactly what happened inside. Ceremonies, gatherings, religious rituals. The truth remains uncertain, and that uncertainty has only deepened the fascination surrounding the site. One of the most remarkable discoveries involved the artwork. Many stone slabs contained carved geometric designs, patterns, symbols, lines carefully etched into stone thousands of years ago. The carvings reveal a level of creativity and sophistication that surprised researchers. These were not isolated farmers living simple lives. These were people capable of monumental architecture, artistic expression, and large-scale cooperation. The more archaeologists learned, the more complicated the story became. The Ness of Brodgar appears connected to many nearby monuments. Ancient pathways linked different ceremonial sites across the landscape. People moved between stone circles, burial monuments, and gathering places. The entire region may have functioned as one enormous sacred landscape, a centre of ritual activity attracting communities from across Orkney and perhaps beyond. If true, the significance of the site was immense, yet despite decades of excavation, many questions remain unanswered. Who built these structures? Why was this location chosen? What beliefs inspired such massive construction projects? And why was the site eventually abandoned? At some point, activity ceased. Buildings fell into ruin. Stone walls collapsed. The once thriving complex slowly disappeared beneath layers of soil. For thousands of years, the lost city remained hidden, its existence forgotten, until archaeology brought it back into the light. Today, the Ness of Brodgar is considered one of the most important prehistoric discoveries in Europe. Many researchers compare its significance to famous sites such as Stonehenge and Skara Brae. Some believe it may be even more important, because it reveals a world far more advanced and interconnected than anyone once imagined. A world where monumental architecture existed long before written history, where communities gathered around sacred places, and where enormous stone structures rose from the windswept islands of northern Scotland. Hidden beside the famous village of Skara Brae stood an even greater mystery, a lost stone city, a forgotten ceremonial centre, and one of the most extraordinary archaeological discoveries of the modern age, the ancient circle older than Stonehenge. For thousands of years, the fields of southern England concealed a secret beneath the soil. From the surface, there was almost nothing to see. No towering stones, no giant monuments, no obvious clues that anything unusual had once existed there. Yet hidden beneath the ground lay one of the oldest ceremonial structures ever discovered in Britain, a place known today as the Flagstones Enclosure. and a site that may help explain how some of Europe's greatest prehistoric monuments first began. The story starts in Dorset, a region famous for ancient landscapes and archaeological discoveries. For centuries, people lived, travelled, and farmed across these rolling hills without realising what lay beneath their feet. Then archaeologists began uncovering strange patterns in the soil, circular ditches, buried features, evidence that something remarkable once stood here. As excavations continued, the picture slowly emerged. The site was not a settlement, it was not a fortress, and it was not a simple burial ground. Instead, it appeared to be a carefully planned ceremonial enclosure built more than 5,000 years ago. That makes it older than Stonehenge, older than many of Britain's most famous prehistoric monuments, and possibly one of the earliest large ceremonial spaces ever created in the region. The enclosure consisted of a nearly perfect circular ditch surrounding an open central area. Its shape immediately attracted attention. The design seemed deliberate, purposeful, almost symbolic. Researchers believe people gathered here for reasons far more important than everyday life. Ceremonies may have taken place inside. Communities may have assembled here during significant events. This site may even have played a role in rituals connected to death and remembrance. One of the most fascinating discoveries involved human burials. Archaeologists uncovered evidence that some individuals were buried within the enclosure itself. This suggested that the site held spiritual importance. The dead were not placed randomly. They were connected to the monument, connected to the landscape, and connected to traditions that have long since disappeared. The mystery deepened as researchers studied the age of the enclosure. Scientific dating revealed that flagstones belonged to a period when Britain was undergoing enormous change. Farming communities were spreading across the countryside. Permanent settlements were becoming more common. New ideas were moving between regions. People were beginning to reshape both the landscape and their societies. Flagstones appears to stand at the centre of that transformation, almost like a bridge between different worlds. Some archaeologists believe the enclosure may represent an early stage in the development of later ceremonial monuments. The circular design feels familiar. Later generations would build massive stone circles and earthworks across Britain. Sites such as Stonehenge would eventually dominate the prehistoric landscape. But perhaps some of those ideas began here, at flagstones, in a quiet field long before the most famous monuments existed. The site also reveals something important about prehistoric people. For many years, ancient communities were often viewed as isolated groups focused entirely on survival. Flagstones tells a different story. The enclosure required planning, organisation, cooperation. People worked together to create something larger than themselves, something designed to bring communities together, and something intended to last. Although much of the monument disappeared over time, traces survived beneath the soil, waiting, hidden for thousands of years. Storms passed overhead, kingdoms rose and fell, the Roman Empire arrived and vanished. Entire chapters of history unfolded above the buried enclosure, yet the ancient circle remained, preserved beneath the earth. Then archaeology brought it back into the light. Even today, many questions remain unanswered. Why was the enclosure built? What ceremonies took place inside its boundaries? Who were the individuals buried there? And what did the monument mean to the people who created it? The answers disappeared long ago. The builders left behind no written records, only fragments, a ditch, a burial, a circular design etched into the landscape. Yet those fragments tell an extraordinary story, a story from a time before history, before kings, before castles, and before the world's most famous stone circles appeared. Hidden beneath the fields of England stood an ancient ceremonial monument older than Stonehenge, a forgotten gathering place, a sacred circle lost to time, and one of Britain's most fascinating prehistoric mysteries, the ancient city of circles hidden beneath the fields. In the sunlit plains of southern Portugal lies one of Europe's most mysterious archaeological sites. From the ground it appears ordinary. Fields stretch toward the horizon. The landscape is peaceful, quiet, almost empty. Yet beneath the soil lies evidence of a place that once attracted people from across the region for thousands of years. A place filled with giant circles, sacred spaces, burials and ceremonies whose meanings have long been forgotten. This is the Perdigois complex, and it may have been one of the most important gathering places in prehistoric Europe. The site remained hidden for most of modern history. Farmers worked the land. Seasons came and went. Generations lived their lives without realizing that an ancient ceremonial landscape lay beneath their feet. Then archaeologists began investigating unusual markings visible from the air. The discoveries that followed transformed understanding of prehistoric Portugal. What emerged from the excavations was astonishing. Instead of a simple settlement, researchers uncovered a vast complex made up of multiple concentric enclosures. Large circular ditches surrounded carefully planned spaces. Some circles enclosed other circles. The design seemed deliberate, almost monumental. From above, the site resembles an enormous geometric pattern etched into the earth, a place clearly built with purpose. The oldest sections of Perdigois date back more than 5,000 years. At that time, farming communities were spreading across Western Europe. Villages appeared across the landscape, trade networks expanded, ideas travelled between distant regions. Yet Perdigois seems different from ordinary settlements. Evidence suggests people gathered here for special occasions rather than everyday life. The site may have functioned as a ceremonial centre, a destination, a place where communities came together. One of the most intriguing discoveries involves the sheer variety of activities that occurred here. Archaeologists uncovered burials, animal remains, ceremonial objects, imported materials from distant regions. The evidence suggests that people travelled significant distances to reach the complex. That raises an obvious question. Why? What made this place so important? No one knows for certain, but many researchers believe Perdigois served as a centre for rituals, gatherings, and social events that connected different communities. In a world without cities, monuments like this may have brought people together on a massive scale. The circular layout adds another layer of mystery. Ancient cultures around the world often attach symbolic meaning to circles. They represented cycles, the heavens, nature, life and death. Whether the builders of Perdigois viewed the circles in the same way remains unknown. Yet their repeated use throughout the site suggests that the shape held special significance. The builders were creating more than simple boundaries. They were creating a landscape filled with meaning. One of the most fascinating discoveries came from the burials. Human remains found at the site reveal complex funeral practices. Some individuals appear to have been treated differently from others. Special objects accompanied certain burials. Ceremonies likely took place before the dead were laid to rest. These practices hint at beliefs that archaeologists can only partially reconstruct. The people left no written records, no explanations, only clues, and those clues often raise more questions than answers. The mystery deepens further when researchers consider the site's longevity. Perdigois was not used for a single generation. People returned here again and again over many centuries. Different communities modified the landscape, added new features, created new spaces. The complex evolved through time, yet its importance endured. Something about this place kept drawing people back. Perhaps it was tradition, perhaps religion, perhaps something else entirely. Then, eventually, activity ceased. The gatherings ended, the ceremonies stopped, the circles were abandoned. Wind and rain slowly erased traces of the ancient complex. The earth reclaimed the site. For thousands of years, the city of circles vanished from memory, until archaeology uncovered it once more. Today, Perdigois is considered one of the most important prehistoric sites in the Iberian Peninsula. Yet despite decades of research, much remains unknown. Why was it built? Who travelled here? What beliefs inspired such an enormous project? And what exactly happened inside those circles thousands of years ago? The answers remain buried beneath the Portuguese soil, waiting, silent, hidden within one of Europe's greatest archaeological mysteries, an ancient city of circles, a forgotten ceremonial landscape, and a place where people gathered long before history was ever written. The fortress city protected by 4 walls. In the dry hills of southern Spain lie the ruins of a place that should not have existed. A settlement so advanced, so heavily defended, that archaeologists sometimes compare it to a prehistoric fortress city. It was built thousands of years before the Roman Empire, thousands of years before medieval castles appeared across Europe. Yet its people surrounded themselves with massive walls, powerful defences, and carefully planned structures unlike anything seen before in the region. This was Los Millares, and it remains one of the most remarkable archaeological sites in prehistoric Europe. Today, the ruins overlook a rugged landscape near Almería in southeastern Spain. The surrounding terrain is dry and rocky, deep valleys cut through the countryside. From a distance, the site appears quiet, almost forgotten. But more than 4,000 years ago, this place was one of the most important settlements on the Iberian Peninsula. The story of Los Millares begins during the Copper Age, a time when human societies were changing rapidly. New technologies were emerging, trade networks were expanding, communities were becoming larger and more organized. In many regions, people still lived in relatively simple villages. But Los Millares was different. The settlement was protected by multiple defensive walls. Not one wall, not two, but several layers of fortification surrounding the community. Massive stone barriers stretched across the landscape. Watchtowers guarded important approaches. Defensive structures controlled movement in and out of the settlement. For archaeologists, the scale of these defences raised an immediate question. Who were they protecting themselves from? The builders clearly believed security was important. Very important. Constructing such fortifications required enormous effort. Hundreds of people may have participated in the work. Stone had to be gathered, walls had to be planned, labour had to be coordinated. The project reveals a level of organisation that surprised early researchers. Inside the defences stood homes, workshops, storage areas and communal spaces. This was not simply a military outpost. It was a thriving community, a place where people lived, worked and raised families. Archaeologists estimate that hundreds, perhaps even thousands of people may have occupied the settlement during its peak. That made Los Millares one of the largest communities in prehistoric Spain. One of the reasons for its success may have been copper. The surrounding region contained valuable mineral resources. The people of Los Millares were among the earliest metalworkers in Europe. They learned how to extract and shape copper into tools and objects. This knowledge gave them advantages that earlier communities never possessed. Trade likely flourished. Goods moved between distant regions. Connections expanded across the Iberian Peninsula. The settlement became part of a growing prehistoric world. But perhaps the most fascinating discoveries lie beyond the walls. Surrounding Los Millares are dozens of ancient tombs, large stone burial chambers scattered across the landscape. Some are surprisingly elaborate. Others contain evidence of grave goods placed beside the dead. These tombs suggest that the people who lived here held complex beliefs about death and the afterlife. The cemetery became almost a city of the dead standing beside the city of the living. Together they created a landscape unlike anything else in prehistoric Europe. One mystery continues to intrigue archaeologists. Why were such powerful defences necessary? Were communities competing for resources? Were conflicts becoming more common? Or were the walls symbols of status and power as much as protection? The evidence remains incomplete. The people of Los Millares left no written records, no explanations survive, only stones and questions. As centuries passed, the settlement eventually declined. Its walls fell silent. Homes were abandoned. The population disappeared. The once powerful community slowly faded into history. Wind and time covered the ruins. The fortress city vanished from memory. Then archaeology brought it back. Excavations revealed the scale of the settlement, the complexity of its defences, and the sophistication of its people. Each discovery challenged assumptions about prehistoric Europe. These were not isolated villagers struggling to survive. They were builders, engineers, metalworkers, and organisers capable of creating one of the most impressive settlements of their age. Today, the ruins of Los Millares still overlook the Spanish landscape. The walls remain, the tombs remain, and the mystery remains. A fortress city protected by 4 walls, a centre of early metalworking, and one of the most extraordinary lost worlds ever uncovered in Europe. The stone fortress built at the edge of the ocean. On a rocky peninsula along the wild coast of northwestern Spain stands one of the most dramatic archaeological sites in Europe. Waves crash against the cliffs below. Atlantic winds sweep across the shoreline. The ocean stretches endlessly toward the horizon. And perched above it all are the remains of an ancient stone settlement, a fortress so perfectly positioned that it seems to grow directly from the rocks themselves. This is Castro de Baronia, and for more than 2,000 years it has guarded its secrets above the sea. At first sight, the location feels almost impossible. The settlement occupies a narrow peninsula connected to the mainland by only a small strip of land. On three sides, steep cliffs plunge into the Atlantic Ocean. The natural defences are extraordinary. Anyone approaching would have been visible from a great distance. Any attack from the sea would have faced towering rocks and crashing waves. It is difficult to imagine a more strategic location. Which raises an obvious question. Why did ancient people choose to build a community here? The answer begins during the Iron Age. Long before Roman armies arrived in Spain, the region was home to Celtic communities often known as the Castro culture. These people constructed fortified settlements across the hills and coastlines of northwestern Iberia. Many of those settlements have disappeared. Others survive only as fragments. But Castro de Baronia remains one of the best preserved examples ever discovered. Archaeologists believe the settlement was occupied more than 2,000 years ago. At its peak, dozens of stone houses stood within the protective walls. Families lived here, cooked here, worked here, raised children here. Life unfolded against the constant backdrop of the Atlantic Ocean. The houses themselves reveal fascinating details. Most were circular in shape, built from carefully stacked stone. Some were grouped close together, others occupied slightly elevated positions overlooking the sea. Walking through the ruins today, visitors can still trace the outlines of entire neighbourhoods. It feels less like an archaeological site, and more like a frozen moment from the distant past. One of the most impressive features is the defensive wall. Massive stone fortifications protected the entrance to the peninsula. Anyone entering the settlement would have passed through a narrow controlled access point. The builders clearly understood defence. They used both architecture and geography to their advantage. The result was a community that was extraordinarily difficult to attack. Yet despite its strong defences, Castro de Baronia was more than a fortress. Evidence suggests its inhabitants were skilled fishermen and traders. The sea provided food. Trade routes connected distant communities. Boats likely travelled along the coast carrying goods and information. Rather than isolating the settlement, the ocean may have connected it to a much larger world. That possibility fascinates archaeologists, because the people living here were not simply surviving at the edge of the continent. They were participating in networks that stretched far beyond the horizon. The mystery deepens when researchers consider the settlement's eventual fate. At some point, life here came to an end. The houses were abandoned. The walls fell silent. The people disappeared from the peninsula. Why remains uncertain. Changing political conditions, economic shifts, new opportunities elsewhere. Any of these factors could have contributed. But the complete story has been lost. Like so many ancient sites, Castro de Baronia left behind more questions than answers. Excavations have uncovered pottery, tools, and everyday objects that offer glimpses into life within the settlement. Yet the names of its inhabitants remain unknown. Their voices vanished long ago. Only the stones remain, and those stones continue telling part of the story. One of the reasons the site captures so many imaginations today is its setting. Few archaeological locations are as visually striking. The Atlantic Ocean surrounds the ruins. Waves crash below the cliffs. Seabirds circle overhead. The landscape feels timeless. Standing there, it is easy to imagine ancient watchmen scanning the horizon. Fishermen preparing their boats. Families gathering inside circular stone homes as storms rolled in from the sea. The connection between people and landscape feels unusually strong. Perhaps that is why the settlement still feels alive. Today, Castro de Baronia is considered one of Spain's most important Iron Age sites, not because of treasure, not because of kings, but because it offers a rare window into a forgotten coastal world, a world where stone walls met the ocean, where entire communities lived at the edge of the Atlantic, and where one remarkable fortress survived centuries of wind, waves, and time, a stone city above the sea, a forgotten stronghold of the Iron Age, and one of Europe's most breathtaking archaeological mysteries. A temple older than the pyramids. On a rocky coastline overlooking the Mediterranean Sea stands a monument so ancient that it challenges our understanding of the prehistoric world. It was already thousands of years old when the first pharaohs ruled Egypt. It existed before Stonehenge reached its final form, and it was built by a people whose names have vanished from history. This is Mnajdra Temple, one of the oldest freestanding stone structures on Earth, and one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. The temple stands on the southern coast of Malta, a small island nation located in the heart of the Mediterranean. Today, the sea sparkles below the cliffs. Waves roll gently toward the shore. The landscape feels peaceful, but thousands of years ago something extraordinary happened here. Ancient builders gathered massive blocks of limestone and transformed them into a monument unlike anything the world had seen before. The oldest sections of Niagara date back more than 5,000 years. That makes the temple older than the pyramids of Giza, older than many of the world's most famous ancient monuments. Yet despite its incredible age, the structure survives remarkably well. Walking through the site today feels almost surreal. Huge stone blocks form curved walls. Doorways lead into carefully designed chambers. Massive stones weighing several tons stand exactly where prehistoric builders placed them. The obvious question is how? How did people living thousands of years before modern technology move stones of such enormous size? The builders left no written records, no instructions, no explanation, only the temple itself. Archaeologists believe entire communities may have worked together to construct the monument. The process would have required planning, organisation, and engineering knowledge far beyond what many once assumed prehistoric societies possessed. Every stone had to be positioned precisely. Every chamber carefully designed. Nothing about the structure appears accidental. One of the most fascinating aspects of Niagara is its relationship with the sky. Researchers discovered that parts of the temple align with important solar events. During the spring and autumn equinoxes, sunlight enters the temple and illuminates specific locations within the structure. At the solstices, different parts of the monument are highlighted by the rising sun. The effect is remarkable. The builders clearly understood the movements of the heavens, and they intentionally incorporated that knowledge into the design. Why? That remains one of the site's greatest mysteries. Perhaps the temple served as a giant calendar. Perhaps it played a role in religious ceremonies, or perhaps the alignment symbolized a deeper connection between the people, the earth, and the sky. Whatever the reason, the precision is difficult to ignore. Niagara was not simply a building. It was a monument designed with purpose. The temple is also part of a much larger story. Across Malta and nearby Gozo stand several prehistoric temple complexes. Together, they represent one of the most remarkable concentrations of ancient architecture anywhere in the world. For centuries, scholars struggled to understand who built them. The civilization responsible left behind no written language, no historical records, no surviving names. Their entire world must be reconstructed from stone, and those stones reveal only fragments. Excavations have uncovered statues, pottery, tools, and ceremonial objects. Some artifacts suggest the builders placed great importance on fertility, nature, and ritual life. Others hint at complex social organization. Yet many questions remain unanswered. What ceremonies took place inside these chambers? Who controlled the temples? Why were such enormous resources devoted to their construction? The mystery becomes even greater when considering what happened next. At some point, the temple building culture disappeared. The monuments were abandoned, activity ceased, the reasons remain unclear. Climate changes, resource shortages, social upheaval. Various theories have been proposed, but no definitive answer has emerged. The people who built Niagara simply vanished from history, leaving their temples behind, waiting for future generations to rediscover them. For thousands of years, wind and weather battered the site. Empires rose across the Mediterranean. The Phoenicians arrived. The Romans followed. Kingdoms emerged and disappeared. Yet Niagara endured, silent, ancient, unmoving. Today, visitors standing within its chambers often experience a sense of wonder. The stones feel impossibly old. The architecture feels strangely sophisticated. And the mystery remains as powerful as ever. A temple older than the pyramids, a monument aligned with the sun, and a masterpiece built by a civilization that history almost forgot. On the cliffs of Malta stands one of humanity's oldest sacred places, still guarding secrets after more than 5,000 years, the lost city that held thousands of people. When most people imagine prehistoric Europe, they picture small villages, a handful of homes, a few families living together, simple communities scattered across the landscape. But in western Slovakia, archaeologists uncovered evidence of something completely different. a settlement so large that it challenges everything we thought we knew about life thousands of years ago, a place that may have been home to thousands of people, a place so vast that some researchers compare it to a prehistoric city. This was Vrabel, and its story is one of the most surprising discoveries in European archaeology. The site lies among the fertile plains of southwestern Slovakia. Today, the landscape appears peaceful. Fields stretch toward the horizon. Farmers work the land. Villages dot the countryside. Nothing immediately suggests that one of Europe's largest Neolithic settlements once existed here. Yet beneath the soil lies the remains of a community that flourished more than 6,000 years ago. The discovery began when archaeologists noticed unusual patterns beneath the fields. Modern technology revealed traces of ancient structures hidden underground. As investigations continued, the scale of the settlement became clear. House after house appeared, then more houses, then hundreds more. The site seemed to stretch endlessly across the landscape. Researchers soon realized they were looking at something extraordinary. At its peak, Vrabel may have contained hundreds of longhouses. Some estimates suggest that several thousand people could have lived there at the same time. For a Neolithic settlement, that number is astonishing. This was not a small farming village, it was a massive community. One of the largest known settlements of its era. The people who lived here were farmers. They cultivated crops, raised animals, built homes, and created a society far more complex than many historians once imagined. Their houses were long wooden structures arranged in organized groups across the settlement. Entire neighborhoods seem to have existed. Families lived side by side. Communities worked together. Life unfolded on a scale rarely seen during this period. One of the most fascinating mysteries involves how such a large population managed to function. Thousands of people require resources, food, water, organization, cooperation. The settlement would have needed systems capable of supporting daily life for an enormous number of inhabitants. How exactly this was achieved remains a topic of ongoing research. The site reveals a level of social complexity that challenges older views of prehistoric Europe. Yet perhaps the most intriguing discovery involved the settlement's defences. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of large ditches surrounding portions of the community. Some areas appear separated from others. Boundaries existed within the settlement itself. Why? The answer remains uncertain. Perhaps different groups lived in distinct districts. Perhaps the ditches held symbolic meaning, or perhaps tensions existed between communities sharing the same space. The evidence raises as many questions as it answers. As excavations continued, researchers uncovered signs that life at Vrabel was not always peaceful. Certain structures showed evidence of burning. Some areas appear to have experienced episodes of destruction. Whether these events resulted from conflict, accidents, or other causes remains debated. But they reveal that the settlement's history was likely more complicated than it first appears. This was a living community, a place filled with challenges as well as opportunities. The mystery deepens when considering why people gathered here in such large numbers. What attracted them to this location? Why did one settlement grow so much larger than others? The fertile land certainly helped. Agriculture could support substantial populations. But that alone may not explain the site's extraordinary scale. Some archaeologists believe Vrabel became a regional centre, a place where people exchanged goods, ideas, and knowledge, a hub connecting communities across the wider landscape. If true, it may have played a role similar to a city long before cities officially existed. Then, eventually, the settlement declined. The houses were abandoned, the population dispersed, the once crowded community disappeared from the landscape. Grass covered the remains, centuries passed, then millennia. The memory of Vrabel vanished completely, until archaeology brought it back to light. Today, the site offers a rare glimpse into a forgotten world, a world where thousands of people lived together long before written history. A world of farmers, builders, and communities capable of creating something far larger than anyone expected. Hidden beneath the Slovakian countryside lies evidence of a prehistoric mega-settlement, a lost city before cities, a forgotten community of thousands, and one of Europe's most remarkable archaeological mysteries, the world's oldest gold mystery. In 1972, workers digging near the Black Sea coast of Bulgaria made a discovery that stunned archaeologists around the world. Beneath the soil lay an ancient cemetery unlike anything ever found before. graves filled with gold, hundreds of gold objects, thousands of years old. So ancient in fact that they would eventually be recognized as the oldest known worked gold ever discovered on Earth. The site became known as the Varna necropolis, and even today it remains one of archaeology's greatest mysteries. At first, nobody realized the significance of the discovery. The area appeared ordinary, just another stretch of land near the modern city of Varna. But as excavations expanded, archaeologists uncovered grave after grave containing astonishing treasures. Gold bracelets, gold beads, gold ornaments, gold ceremonial objects crafted with incredible skill. The sheer quantity was unbelievable. More than 6,000 gold artifacts would eventually be recovered from the site. Many dated back over 6,500 years. That means the gold was being worked long before the pyramids of Egypt were built, long before most of the world's famous ancient civilizations existed. The discovery forced historians to rethink what prehistoric societies were capable of achieving. Who were these people, and how had they become so advanced? The necropolis contained hundreds of burials. Some were simple, others were extraordinarily rich. One grave in particular attracted worldwide attention. Known as Grave 43, it contained the remains of a man buried with an astonishing amount of gold. More than 1 kilogram of gold objects surrounded him. Scepters, jewellery, decorative ornaments, symbols of status and authority. Whoever he was, he clearly occupied a position of enormous importance, yet his name is lost forever. One of the most fascinating aspects of Varna is what it reveals about social inequality. The difference between certain graves is striking. Some individuals were buried with immense wealth. Others had very few possessions. This suggests that social hierarchies were already emerging. Powerful individuals existed. Leaders may have ruled communities. Status and wealth appear to have played an important role in society. This was a surprising discovery because many researchers once assumed prehistoric communities were relatively equal. Varna told a different story, a story of power, prestige, and growing complexity. The gold itself remains one of the site's greatest mysteries. The craftsmanship is extraordinary. The objects were carefully shaped and decorated using techniques that required considerable skill. These were not crude ornaments. They were the products of experienced artisans, people who understood metalworking at a remarkably early stage in human history. The question is how they acquired such knowledge, and where exactly it came from. Archaeologists believe the people of Varna participated in extensive trade networks stretching across large portions of southeastern Europe. Goods moved between distant communities. Ideas travelled alongside them. The region may have been far more interconnected than anyone once imagined. Varna was not an isolated settlement. It was part of a larger prehistoric world, a world that remains only partially understood. Another mystery involves the symbolic graves. Several burials contained no human remains at all. Instead, archaeologists found carefully arranged objects and offerings. These so-called symbolic graves appear to have held special meaning, but what that meaning was remains uncertain. Were they dedicated to important individuals whose bodies were never recovered? Were they ceremonial monuments? Or did they represent beliefs that have vanished from history? No one knows for sure. As with so many prehistoric sites, the people left behind no written explanations, only clues and questions. The civilization responsible for the necropolis eventually disappeared. Its traditions faded, its settlements vanished. The names of its rulers, artisans and families were forgotten. For thousands of years the cemetery remained hidden beneath the earth. The gold waited in darkness, undisturbed, silent. Then modern archaeology uncovered one of the most extraordinary discoveries ever made. Today the treasures of Varna continue to amaze researchers, not simply because of their beauty, but because of what they reveal: a sophisticated society, advanced craftsmanship, complex social structures, and evidence that human civilization was developing in unexpected ways far earlier than many once believed. Hidden beneath the soil of Bulgaria lay the oldest gold treasure on Earth, a cemetery of forgotten elites, a prehistoric society centuries ahead of its time, and one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries, the mystery of the world's first gold, the cave that changed human history. Hidden among the mountains of southern China lies a cave that may hold evidence of one of the most important inventions ever created by human beings. At first glance, it seems ordinary. A dark opening in a limestone hillside. Quiet, remote, easy to overlook. Yet deep inside this cave, archaeologists uncovered discoveries that forced historians to rethink the story of civilization itself. Because long before cities existed, long before farming spread across the world, and thousands of years before written history began, someone here may have created the world's earliest pottery. This is Yuchanyan Cave, and it preserves a remarkable chapter from humanity's distant past. The cave is located in Hunan province, surrounded by rugged hills and dense vegetation. Today, the landscape feels peaceful, but tens of thousands of years ago, it was home to people living in a very different world. The Ice Age had not fully ended. Large animals still roamed across parts of Asia. Human communities survived by hunting, gathering, and adapting to constantly changing environments. Life was difficult. Every day required skill and resourcefulness. Yet even in that challenging world, innovation was already taking place. When archaeologists began excavating Yuchanyan Cave, they expected to find traces of ancient occupation, stone tools, animal bones, evidence of prehistoric life. What they discovered went far beyond that. Buried within the cave were fragments of pottery unlike anything researchers expected. Scientific dating suggested that some pieces were around 18,000 to 20,000 years old. The implications were enormous. For decades, many historians believed pottery appeared after agriculture. The traditional story suggested that farming communities needed containers for storing food and grain. Therefore, pottery came later. Yuchanyan challenged that assumption. The cave suggested people were making pottery thousands of years before farming became widespread. That raised an obvious question. Why? Why would hunter-gatherers invest time and effort creating ceramic vessels? Researchers proposed several possibilities. The pottery may have been used for cooking, boiling food, processing plants, preparing meals more efficiently. If true, the invention could have transformed daily life. Suddenly, ancient people could access nutrients from foods that were previously difficult to eat. A simple clay vessel may have changed survival itself. One of the most fascinating aspects of the pottery is its appearance. The vessels were handmade, their surfaces are rough and uneven. Nothing about them suggests luxury or decoration, yet their importance cannot be overstated. These humble fragments represent technological innovation at a surprisingly early date. They reveal experimentation, creativity, and a willingness to solve problems in new ways. The people living in Yuchanyan Cave were not simply surviving, they were inventing. Excavations also uncovered animal remains, stone tools, and evidence of repeated occupation. The cave was not visited only once. People returned again and again over generations. Families may have gathered around fires inside its shelter. Meals were prepared. Stories were shared. Children grew up within sight of the cave walls. Thousands of years of human life unfolded here. Yet the names of those people are gone. Their language disappeared. Their culture vanished. Only fragments remain. And those fragments continue rewriting history. The discovery of ancient pottery at Yuchanyan sparked debates among archaeologists around the world. Similar finds appeared elsewhere in East Asia. Researchers began realizing that technological innovation may have emerged earlier and in more places than previously believed. The path towards civilization was not a simple straight line. Different communities experimented with different ideas. Some inventions appeared long before anyone expected. Yuchanyan became one of the most important pieces of that puzzle. The mystery deepens when considering how much remains unknown. Who created the pottery? How was the knowledge passed from one generation to the next? Did neighbouring groups learn from one another? Or did similar inventions emerge independently? The evidence cannot answer every question. The cave preserves clues, not complete stories. Still, those clues are extraordinary, because they reveal people thinking creatively nearly 20,000 years ago. People testing new ideas, people shaping clay and transforming it through fire, a process that would eventually spread across the world. Today, Yuchanyan Cave is recognized as one of the most significant prehistoric sites ever discovered in Asia. Not because of gold, not because of kings, but because it captures a moment of human ingenuity, a moment when ordinary people made an invention that would change history forever. Hidden inside a quiet cave in southern China lies evidence of one of humanity's earliest breakthroughs, a forgotten workshop of innovation, a window into the Ice Age world. and a place where the future may have begun thousands of years before civilization itself. The village where the first farmers became something more. A small settlement stood in northern Syria that would quietly witness one of the greatest transformations humanity had ever experienced. It was a place where ancient traditions met new ideas, a place where people were learning to reshape the world around them. Today it is known as Tel Abyad, and beneath its layers of earth lies a story stretching back more than 8,000 years. At first glance, the site does not appear extraordinary. It is a low mound rising gently above the surrounding landscape, the kind of place many travellers might pass without a second thought. But like many tells in the Middle East, the mound is actually a time capsule. Every layer represents generations of people building homes, abandoning them, and building again. Over centuries, entire communities stacked their lives on top of one another, creating a record of the past buried beneath their feet. Archaeologists began excavating Tel Abyad in the 20th century. What they discovered was remarkable. Instead of a single settlement, they found evidence of repeated occupations spanning thousands of years. Each layer revealed a slightly different world, a different chapter in the long story of human civilization. The earliest inhabitants were among the first farming communities of the region. They cultivated crops, raised animals, built permanent homes, and gradually moved away from the older hunter-gatherer lifestyle that had dominated human history for countless generations. Yet they were not living in cities. Not yet. Tel Abyad captures a fascinating moment in between, a world caught between prehistory and civilization. One of the most intriguing discoveries involved the layout of the settlement itself. Researchers uncovered carefully organised buildings arranged around open spaces. Storage facilities held supplies. Homes were grouped together. The community displayed a level of planning that surprised archaeologists. These people were thinking beyond immediate survival. They were creating systems, organising resources, planning for the future. The evidence suggests a society becoming increasingly complex. Perhaps the most famous discovery at the site involved clay tokens and seals, small objects used to manage goods and resources. At first glance, they seem insignificant. Tiny pieces of clay buried beneath the soil, but their importance is enormous. Many archaeologists view such objects as early steps toward administration and record-keeping. Long before writing appeared, people were already developing ways to track possessions and control resources. In a sense, the foundations of bureaucracy may have begun in places like this. The discovery offers a rare glimpse into the origins of organised society. Excavations also revealed evidence of pottery production. The people of Tel Abyad were skilled craftspeople. They created containers for storage and cooking, decorated objects, tools for daily life. The settlement was not isolated from innovation. New technologies appeared, ideas spread, communities adapted, humanity was changing, and the village changed with it. One of the most fascinating aspects of the site is how long it remained occupied. Generations lived here, then their children, then their grandchildren, century after century. The community evolved as the world around it evolved. Yet traces of continuity remained. Certain traditions endured, certain building practices continued. The settlement became a bridge connecting different eras of human history. But life at Tel Abyad was not always peaceful. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of destruction in some layers. Buildings burned, structures collapsed. Whether these events resulted from conflict, accidents, or environmental challenges remains uncertain. The people who experienced them left behind no written explanations, only clues preserved in ash and earth. The mystery remains unsolved. As centuries passed, larger settlements began emerging elsewhere. The first cities appeared, trade expanded, powerful civilizations rose across Mesopotamia. Gradually, the world was becoming more recognizable. The age of villages was giving way to the age of urban societies. Yet Tel Abyad remained an important witness to that transition, a place where archaeologists can observe humanity learning how to live in entirely new ways. Today, the site is considered one of the most important prehistoric settlements ever excavated in Syria, not because of treasure, not because of rulers or armies, but because it preserves the story of ordinary people, farmers, builders, families, people whose daily choices helped shape the future of civilization. Hidden beneath a Syrian mound lies the record of a world in transition, a village where farming became society, where simple communities became increasingly complex. and where humanity quietly took another step toward the civilizations that would eventually change the world forever. The village of the dead older than the pyramids. A remarkable community stood beside the Tigris River in what is now southeastern Turkey. At first glance, it looked like a simple, prehistoric village. People lived there, cooked meals, raised families, and buried their dead. But when archaeologists began excavating the site, they discovered something unexpected. The dead seemed to be everywhere, beneath floors, inside houses, throughout the settlement, as if the living and the dead had shared the same world. This place was Kurtik Tepe, and it may be one of the most fascinating prehistoric communities ever discovered. The site dates back more than 11,000 years. That makes it older than pottery in many regions, older than farming as we commonly understand it, and older than nearly every famous monument on Earth. The people who lived here occupied a world standing on the edge of enormous change. Humanity was beginning to transition from a mobile lifestyle toward permanent settlements. Old traditions still survived. New ideas were emerging. Kurtik Tepe existed at that turning point. The settlement stood near the Tigris River, one of the great waterways of the ancient Near East. The location offered food, water, and access to resources. Fish were abundant. Wild animals moved through the surrounding landscape. Plants could be gathered from nearby hills and valleys. Life was possible here in ways that encouraged people to stay, and stay they did. Archaeologists uncovered evidence of numerous houses clustered together in a surprisingly organized settlement. The structures were circular or oval in shape, built partially below ground level, simple in appearance. Yet beneath those homes lay one of the site's greatest mysteries: hundreds of burials. The dead were often placed directly beneath house floors. Generation after generation remained physically connected to the places where they had lived. Families may have slept only a few feet above their ancestors. The relationship between the living and the dead appears to have been unusually close. Why? No one knows for certain. But the practice suggests powerful beliefs about memory, ancestry, and community. One of the most astonishing discoveries involved the grave goods. Many burials contained carefully crafted objects: stone bowls, decorated tools, ornaments, carved items displaying remarkable artistic skill. The craftsmanship surprised archaeologists. These people lived thousands of years before cities and kingdoms, yet they were producing objects of extraordinary quality. Some stone vessels were polished so smoothly they appear almost modern. Others featured intricate decorative designs. The people of Kurtik Tepe were not simply surviving, they were creating, expressing ideas, investing time and effort into beauty and symbolism. The site also reveals a society becoming increasingly complex. Researchers found evidence of large-scale food gathering and storage. The community appears to have occupied the settlement for long periods rather than constantly moving across the landscape. This was an important step in human history. Permanent settlement would eventually lead to farming, villages, cities, and civilization itself. At Kurtik Tepe, archaeologists may be witnessing some of the earlier stages of that transformation. The mystery deepens when examining the art. Many artifacts feature geometric patterns and symbolic designs. Some objects appear connected to ritual practices. Others may have held social or spiritual significance. Yet the meanings have been lost. The people who created them left no written explanations, only clues, fragments of a worldview that disappeared thousands of years ago. Like nearby sites such as Göbekli Tepe, Kurtik Tepe has forced researchers to reconsider long-held assumptions. For decades, many believed complex social behaviour emerged only after farming became widespread. Sites like this suggest something different. Communities were already organising themselves, creating traditions, producing art, and developing sophisticated cultural practices before agriculture fully transformed human life. The story of civilization may have begun earlier than anyone imagined. Eventually the settlement was abandoned. The houses collapsed. The people moved on. The village disappeared beneath layers of earth and time. For more than 10,000 years, its secrets remained hidden. Then archaeology brought them back into the light. Today, Kurtik Tepe is recognized as one of the most important prehistoric sites ever discovered in Turkey. Not because of treasure, not because of kings, but because it reveals a forgotten chapter of human history, a world where the living shared space with the dead, a community standing at the dawn of civilization, and a village whose mysteries continue to challenge everything we thought we knew about the ancient past. A village older than the pyramids, a settlement filled with ancestors, and one of the most remarkable archaeological discoveries of the modern age, the lost village where farming may have begun. Thousands of years before the first cities appeared, before kings ruled vast empires, and before writing recorded the story of humanity. A small settlement stood beside the Euphrates River in what is now northern Syria. Today, the site is known as Muribet, and although little remains visible on the surface, archaeologists believe it may hold clues to one of the greatest transformations in human history. The moment when people began changing from hunters and gatherers into farmers. The moment when the foundations of civilization were quietly taking shape. At first glance, Muribet seems like an unlikely place for such an important story. There are no giant monuments, no towering temples, no royal tombs filled with treasure. Instead, what researchers discovered here were the traces of ordinary lives, homes, tools, storage areas, and evidence of people experimenting with a completely new way of living. The settlement stood near the Euphrates, one of the most important rivers in the ancient world. Even thousands of years ago, the region offered advantages that attracted human communities. Fresh water flowed nearby, wild plants grew in abundance, animals gathered along the riverbanks. Life was possible here in ways that were difficult elsewhere. For generations, small groups moved through the landscape hunting animals and gathering food. Then something began to change. People started staying longer. Temporary camps gradually became permanent settlements. Muribet emerged during this remarkable transition. Archaeologists believe some of the earliest occupation dates back more than 10,000 years. That places the village among the oldest known settlements on Earth. The people living here occupied a world very different from our own. There were no roads, no written language, no cities beyond the horizon. Yet evidence suggests these communities were already becoming surprisingly organized. Excavations revealed circular buildings made from mud and stone. Some were small family dwellings. Others appear to have served communal purposes. Generation after generation rebuilt structures in the same locations, creating layers of occupation that accumulated over centuries. The village was not static. It evolved, it grew, and with each generation new ideas emerged. One of the most important discoveries involved plant remains. Researchers found evidence suggesting the people of Muribet were beginning to manage and cultivate wild grains. The process was still in its early stages. They had not yet developed the large-scale agriculture that would later support cities and empires. But something significant was happening. People were learning that food could be controlled rather than simply collected. The implications were enormous. Farming would eventually transform human society. It would allow larger populations, permanent settlements, trade networks, governments, and civilizations. At Muribet, archaeologists may be witnessing some of the earliest steps in that journey. The site also revealed fascinating evidence of cultural life. Stone tools were crafted with remarkable skill. Decorative objects appeared among the remains. Small figurines and symbolic items hinted at beliefs and traditions that have long since disappeared. These were not people focused only on survival. They had ideas, rituals, stories, and ways of understanding the world around them. One of the most intriguing aspects of Muribet is how it challenges older assumptions about prehistory. For many years, ancient hunter-gatherers were often portrayed as simple and isolated. The evidence from sites like this tells a different story. The inhabitants were adaptable, innovative, and capable of organizing communities in surprisingly sophisticated ways. They were laying foundations for changes that would shape the future of humanity. Yet despite its importance, much about Muribet remains mysterious. The people left no written records, no names survive, no explanations accompany the ruins. Archaeologists must reconstruct the story through fragments: a stone blade, a piece of charcoal, a buried wall. Each discovery reveals another clue, but never the complete picture. The village itself eventually disappeared. Over time, buildings collapsed. New communities emerged elsewhere. The landscape changed. The memory of Muribet faded into the distant past. For thousands of years, the settlement remained hidden beneath layers of earth, its story forgotten, until archaeology brought it back to light. Today, researchers recognize Muribet as one of the most important prehistoric sites ever discovered in the Near East, not because of treasure, not because of powerful rulers, but because it captures a turning point, a moment when humanity was beginning to reshape its relationship with the world. A lost village beside the Euphrates, a settlement at the dawn of farming, and a place where the future quietly began thousands of years before history was ever written. The forgotten stone builders of the Atlantic. Far beyond the shores of Europe, surrounded by the waters of the Atlantic Ocean, lies a chain of volcanic islands filled with ancient secrets. Today, these islands are known as the Canary Islands. Millions visit them every year. They come for the beaches, the mountains, the warm climate. But hidden among the volcanic landscapes are traces of a forgotten civilization that continues to puzzle archaeologists. Stone structures, ancient settlements, mysterious carvings, and unanswered questions stretching back thousands of years. The first people known to live on the islands are often called the Guanches. When European explorers eventually arrived, they discovered communities that had developed in relative isolation for centuries. The islanders possessed their own traditions, their own beliefs, and their own way of life. Yet one mystery immediately stood out. How had these people reached islands located hundreds of kilometers from the African coast? And how long had they been there? The answers remain surprisingly uncertain. Archaeologists continue uncovering evidence that reveals fragments of their story. Across the island stand unusual stone structures built from volcanic rock. Some occupy elevated positions overlooking valleys and coastlines. Others appear hidden among rugged terrain. Many seem carefully planned rather than randomly assembled. The builders clearly invested considerable effort into their construction. But why? That question remains difficult to answer. Some researchers believe certain structures were ceremonial. Others suggest astronomical purposes. A few may have served as gathering places for local communities. The challenge is that the builders left no written explanations behind. Only the stones remain, silent witnesses to a vanished world. One of the most fascinating discoveries involves the apparent relationship between some structures and the movement of the sun. At certain locations, alignments appear to correspond with important seasonal events. Sunrise and sunset positions may have carried special meaning. If true, the builders possessed a sophisticated understanding of their environment. They were not simply surviving on remote islands. They were observing, planning, and perhaps connecting their monuments to the heavens above. The landscape itself adds another layer of mystery. The Canary Islands are shaped by volcanic activity. Towering peaks dominate the horizon. Ancient lava flows cover large portions of the terrain. Some locations feel almost otherworldly. For ancient people, such dramatic environments often became sacred. Mountains were places of power. Volcanic landscapes inspired stories and beliefs. The natural world was deeply connected to spiritual life. Many archaeologists suspect the same may have been true here. Excavations have revealed additional clues. Rock carvings appear on cliffs and stone surfaces. Ancient caves contain evidence of burials. Remains of settlements show that island communities adapted remarkably well to their surroundings. Each discovery expands our understanding. Yet every answer seems to create new questions. Who exactly built these structures? What ceremonies took place there? And why were some locations chosen over others? The mystery deepens when considering the isolation of the islands. Separated from major civilizations by vast stretches of ocean, the Canary Islands developed their own unique culture. For centuries that culture evolved independently. Then, everything changed. European conquest transformed the islands forever. Traditions disappeared, languages faded, and much of the old world was lost. What survives today are fragments. Fragments of stone, fragments of memory, fragments of a civilization archaeologists are still trying to understand. Walking among these ancient structures today feels like stepping into a forgotten chapter of history. The Atlantic wind moves across the volcanic slopes. The mountains rise in the distance, and the stones remain exactly where they were placed centuries ago, waiting, silent, unmoving, guarding secrets that may never be fully revealed. Because the Canary Islands are more than beautiful landscapes, they are home to one of the Atlantic's oldest mysteries, a story written in stone, a story of forgotten builders, and a world that still refuses to give up all of its secrets.